Judge King, and thank you all very, very much for joining us this morning to talk about the urgent need for gun safety legislation. And I really could not be more pleased to have Mike Song with us today. And it's Michael and Kristin Song who brought us to today, and I think an incredible historic vote that we will have on the House, in the House of Representatives sometime later today. We know that Americans face a rising tide of gun violence across the nation. The new CDC data indicate guns are the #1 killer of children in America, more than car accidents or cancer. Over the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active duty military combined. That's combined. This is unacceptable, avoidable, and senseless. The statistics could not illustrate more clearly the work that we must do. Today, the House of Representatives will vote on the Protecting Our Kids Act. It is a comprehensive package. It addresses gun violence in the United States. I am pleased that it includes my legislation, Ethan's Law. It really is legislation. It's Michael and Kristin's legislation, Ethan's Law, which will keep kids across the country safe by ensuring that firearms are safely stored and secured with a gun lock. I introduced Ethan's Law in the House of Representatives over 3 years ago in memory of Ethan Song. As you all know, a Guilford, Connecticut teenager, 15 years old. He accidentally shot himself with an unsecured gun in 2018. The firearm was improperly stored in a Tupperware box with the gun lock keys and ammunition nearby. Before I had the honor of introducing Ethan's Law in Congress, it passed the Connecticut General Assembly and the state Senate with broad bipartisan support. It was signed into law in 2019. And that happened because of Kristin and Michael Song, literally going door to door at the state legislature to make that happen. And today we take a critical step to make Ethan's Law the national standard in safe storage. Ethan's Law will finally set federal standards for safe gun storage. It will incentivize states to create and implement safe gun storage laws. This legislation is a child safety bill, first and foremost, because losing just one child to accidental gun violence is too many. What happened to Ethan was tragic. No parent should have to lose their child because of an unsecured gun. It is time for the Congress to act because our children's lives depend on it. We have a duty to pass legislation that protects our children from senseless and accidental violence. As members of Congress, one of our most sacred duties is to protect the American people, especially our children. On that measure, we have failed, and doing nothing to prevent these tragedies is both cowardly and shameful. And until we take action, innocent children will continue to die. In the words of Ethan Song's parents, Mike and Kristin Song, whose relentless advocacy, as I said, have led us to this moment, and I quote, "Not a single person on earth can change the past, but every one of us can change the future," end quote. So let us change the future while saving countless lives by passing the Protecting Our Kids Act. You know, I will just say this to you because I think it is so poignant in how important this bill is today. When Kristin Song found out that Ethan's Law was included in the Protecting Our Kids Act, she said the first person she wanted to tell was Ethan, her beautiful boy that she has fearlessly fought for, she and Mike have fought for, since the day she was forced to watch him lowered into the ground. Upon hearing the news, she immediately drove to the cemetery, ran across it yelling, and I quote, "Ethan, we did it. Your life-saving legislation will be heard. It will get a vote. It will get a vote, and we're going to do that today." And with that, I would like to turn this over to Ethan's dad, Mike Song, for some brief remarks, and then we will take questions from the press. Here's the bottom line. Saving our children must be a unifying mission for our nation, and we will not rest until this job is done. Mike, please go ahead.
Oh, Rosa, I cannot believe that we are here on our journey together from the first hug that you gave us. I'm just overcome with joy. It's bittersweet joy, but it's a very pure joy of meaning. And I think today is about freedom in a sense, you know, it's about we the people expressing our desire for freedom to not be separated from our children by a bullet unnecessarily, or it's a freedom for us to have a gun locked up so that a Parkland or Sandy Hook can never happen again. This is a unified cry for freedom to the right to life and liberty and happiness. And so many of those aspects have been denied, Kristin and I. And it's also a really tribute, I think, to everyone who's pushed so hard for so long for this to happen. And it's a victory. It's a kind of a victory that I'm celebrating with all of you in my heart. The state of Connecticut led the way in many ways. And I think now Rosa and Senator Blumenthal and Senator Murphy and all of the folks who co-sponsored the bill are showing what true leadership is all about. And I'm humbled by it just to be here. But most of all, Ethan's on my heart. You know, at his funeral, I sang the song, Let It Be, to him. It had a deep meaning for me. It meant that I can't change a second of the past. I have to let it be. But every one of us listening can change the future. You can change tomorrow, like Rosa DeLauro has been doing for her entire career. So we decided, rather than to be in Washington, D.C., where everyone is gathered to kind of herald this amazing achievement by Congress, by the House, Kristin and I, Evan and Emily, are going to Boston. And where are we going? We're going to go to a Paul McCartney concert, and we're all going to be together hugging and singing the song Let It Be with the guy who wrote it. Because we know that Ethan loved that song, he loved the Beatles, and we know Ethan will be listening, and he's listening to this press conference right now, and he is saying, thank you for helping to keep kids safe. It's just common sense. When there's kids around, we have to lock guns down. So thank you so much for this moment on behalf of our whole family.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much to you and Kristin, and to your children, and we'll be with you in spirit at that concert, and hugging as well. So, and now let me just open it up for questions.
Thank you both for those powerful remarks. We'll turn it over to questions now. Again, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and I will ask them, or you can use the raise hand feature and I'll prompt you to unmute yourself to ask your question. With that, we'll turn it over to Susan Raff for the first question. Susan, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
See. Good morning.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm okay. It's nice to see you all. It's nice to see Mike, who is a fearless fighter and a fearless runner. I saw you all on Saturday, and I was embarrassed about my time because he runs like the wind, which I'm not surprised. And I had the opportunity to speak with Kristin at the race. And there's no question that people want to save lives, and maybe we've come further this time around than we have in previous years. But the Senate is really an obstacle. It's a big challenge. And so how do you reconcile with that, Mike, that, you know, all the sentiments and all the young people who turned out at this race, right? Some who knew your son, some who didn't. People want change. They want to see something. And but this may not be a victory in the end.
Well, Susan, I have to say, you also run very fast, and I think you won a trophy at this race, our 5K road race. But to answer your question, we know the math in the Senate is difficult and it's tough. But we also believe that every incremental step that we take is moving us towards a safer America, an America in which parents can be confident knowing that there isn't going to be a gun taken from a home to their school by a young person to do some terrible damage. So we know that everything that is happening here is happening for a reason and in its own time, and perhaps there is a master plan for it that we ourselves don't know. But I will say this. My heroes are Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I know how long they waited. I know how hard they fought every single day. So for me, the day that this happens and gets signed into law is less relevant than being in the fight with people like Rosa and all the entire gun violence prevention community. It's plotting every step of the way to create the tidal wave that will force the change. And getting this far, this victory in the House is a way to put tremendous pressure on anyone who says, no, I think that, and for example, like Chip Roy, who's a representative from Texas, who says, no, I think that it's fine to have my loaded gun. And he holds his gun up right here, unloaded 24/7 with kids in my house, with my 12-year-old son moving through the house. I messaged him and I just said, Dad to Dad, Chip, you know, I know we're on the opposite sides of the fence and we're supposed to hate each other, but man, you don't want to be at your son's funeral. You want to be at your son's baseball game. And I didn't get to go to my son's baseball game. And I can tell you, going through your son's funeral is just about the worst thing you can imagine. So we're going to keep fighting. We see some cracks in the wall. We see the walls crumbling at some point, just like it did for civil rights. It'll crumble for this too, thanks to everyone working
I don't want to hold up because I know there are other people who would like to ask a question, but you know, like many Americans, I'm watching a lot of TV and reading a lot these days and seeing a lot of statistics. And I think I read somewhere that, you know, a large percentage, over 40% of Republicans feel that what we're seeing now, excuse me, is just the price of having guns in this country. And what does that say to others? That this is just what's going to happen, that we have a Second Amendment and unfortunately people and our children are going to get killed.
Yeah, I would just say very briefly, it's about freedom, to the right to life, liberty, and happiness. It's the favorite word on the other side is freedom. We have our freedom too. And our freedom, I think, is a much more profound freedom, that a child will be home with his family instead of 6 feet under the ground where my son is.
You know, I think the majority of the American people understand that we cannot continue the carnage. Probably the only place where that is not internalized or fully understood or is, and I'll be frank, with Republicans in the House and in the United States Senate. And these are not political issues, but it's being made a political issue. And we are going to try every single day to make sure that we can move this ball forward. And today, you said something, Susan, maybe it's not a victory. Today is a victory. Today is a victory. Let us not think about what we can't get done today. But we weren't sure yesterday that we could get done what we're getting done today. And that we will move to tomorrow and make sure we keep at this. That's the way things get done. That's the way legislation gets passed. That's the way public policy is initiated and implemented.
Thank you. We'll now turn it over to Lisa Backus with Hearst Media. Lisa, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to go back, since Susan very well covered what I was going to ask, so thank you for doing that. But what I do need to ask is, Ms. DeLauro, you had mentioned that guns are the #1 cause of death for children. Can you reiterate that for me? Go back over that for me.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. Again, this is not coming from me. It's coming from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Guns are the #1 killer, more than car accidents or cancer. And over the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active duty military combined. There is so much research. We've got 4.6 million kids today who live in homes with at least one gun that is loaded and unlocked. And 70s, this has come from the Secret Service's National Threat Assessment Center, 76% of the time, firearms used in mass school shootings are obtained from the student's home, a relative, or from a friend's home. And that's why this gun storage legislation is a critical piece of where we need to go for the future. And it is a straightforward solution. And it is a public safety issue. It's a child safety issue. This is not about abridging anyone's, constitutional rights. But the statistics are overwhelming. They really are, and again, I don't make them up. You can verify them yourselves and look into it. And I think there may be, the awareness increases every single day because of what happens every single day in the U.S. Recently Buffalo, Texas, and you look at what happened in Tennessee and other places over the weekend. It is just nonstop, and we have the ability to help to stop it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now have a written question from Paul Bass with the New Haven Independent. Paul asks, what are the prospects for this to be included in the Senate version of the bill? Are there any specific Republicans who are on board or who have expressed support for Ethan's law?
Let me just tell you, I'm going to ask Michael to say something about this as well. I've talked to, obviously, Senator Blumenthal is a co-sponsor in the Senate. Senator Murphy knows all about it. I'm hopeful that it will be a part of the negotiation in the Senate. I'll tell you what is extraordinary. When I told you that Kristin and Mike went door to door in the state house, it's door to door in the Congress, office by office, not only in the House but in the Senate. I don't know, and Mike, you can address this. It's somewhere over 200 meetings, or maybe even more. So that is where this happens. It's door to door, not getting tired, not giving up. And Mike and Kristin are never giving up. I can tell you that. Mike, you can talk about the kinds of meetings that you all have been engaged in.
Kristin led the charge. I'll say this. I want to say it 3 times. Kristin has led the charge. Kristin has led the charge. Kristin has led the charge. I have a full-time job, and she goes down with this dream team of people, and they pound the pavement. And there are moments, I've been there, about 5 or 6 times with them, and there are moments where are profoundly surreal. So there was a moment where we were talking with Ted Cruz, and he came over after Kristin had testified and was surprisingly, open to chatting about this. And you could tell that he had a genuine fear in his heart for when his young kids go into somebody else's house. And because we talked about the fact that while he had his guns locked down, quite possibly his children were going to houses where they weren't locked down. So if it matters to lock down your guns because your kids are at home, you've got to be worried when they're in homes where the guns are unsecured. And there was a brief moment where I think he lapsed into basically being maybe expressing what he really felt, which is, of course, I'd want those guns locked down. And of course, I'd be worried about my daughter. So we've had these constructive conversations. I know that Senator Cornyn and Senator Collins are talking about this pretty carefully with Senator Blumenthal on that side and Senator Murphy, who we are just lucky to be in Connecticut with these 2 great senators and all of our representatives, like Rosa. Of course, Rosa's our favorite, but we love them all. So the answer to that question is there are discussions going out. There is a little bit of, well, what should be included in this? What shouldn't be included in that? It is an uphill battle, though. To your point, Paul, it's we definitely here know that there aren't. There's plenty of Democrat senators who are ready to vote for it. There are far fewer Republicans who aren't. But as Rosa said, I couldn't agree with her more. Every time a tragedy happens, people look at themselves and say, are we really just going to send well wishes? Is that what we were elected to do? No, of course not. We were elected to change things. We're not called sit-arounders. We're called legislators, called legislators, and you know that it's eating them inside to know they're not helping keep kids safe. They're parents too, and just for purely political reasons. So I'm optimistic, but also understand we have a battle, but we're in the battle with people who are fighters. There aren't any people who are not willing to stand up and fight for something in this movement.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Congresswoman DeLauro or Mike Song? Again, you can drop those questions in the chat, or you can use the raised hand feature and unmute yourself.
Thank you one and all for being here, and Mike, and to you and to Kristin, and have a wonderful time with your family. And again, we send our hugs and kisses, and just know you're never alone. You're never alone. Take care, my dear friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much.